Good morning, good afternoon, hello, wherever you are from. Welcome to a Pait Group webinar. We've got some guests with us today. So it's not just going to be Pait Group, but we have invited Powell Software to come talk with us about some of the ways we can modernize our SharePoint deployment. We were talking before the webinar, modern is a big word right now, and we are all about ways to get our arms around modernizing and making deployments easier. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I have with me a couple of guest stars for our webinar. I have Stephanie Donahue. She is Pait Group Microsoft MVP. She has been working in the industry. She has over 8 years of experience just with SharePoint. That's probably a 2018 number. It's probably over 9 years of experience with SharePoint now. And then I have Juan Larios from Powell, another SharePoint expert. He's been a multiple MVP awarded professional. He's been working with Powell since 2017, but again, has been working in the SharePoint space for several years. And those of you that have joined our Joy of SharePoint webinar, so I need to share my screen. Apologies, I think we need to flip. Bear with us 1 second. So Juan, you asked me to share my screen and I am not currently a presenter. Pardon us for our technical difficulties.
No problem. I'll make you a presenter.
Perfect.
Ooh, it says that you are presenter. Can you not find the play button?
No, I've got it. Just making sure I've got the right screen here. And let me go to slideshow. How does that look, guys? Is that, as we say in Alabama, more better? So we recently had a question, and this is something that Stephanie ran into. And the question was, we had an individual who is part of a group developing an IT roadmap, right? They've got stuff in SharePoint 2013, but in the cloud, right? So those of us that are familiar with Office 365 and SharePoint Online, we know that's not really SharePoint 2013, right? That's SharePoint Online, but if you're in classic mode, it still looks like 2013. So they're like, well, what do we upgrade to? What do we change? How do we keep the features and the customization and the branding we're used to? How do we get this stuff deployed, updated? You know, how do we make this work for us? And if you have been through this process, you're probably nodding your head going, oh, yeah, how do we do that? Because that's a great question, because it doesn't just apply to people that are currently in SharePoint 13 or that are still classic. We've still got folks out there that we run into that are in SharePoint 2010 or older that are going, how do we bridge this gap, right? How do we modernize? How do we take advantage of these great features and functionalities that are coming along in a way that makes sense for our people, the bandwidth that we have professionally in our company? How do we modernize classic SharePoint? So we're going to do a pretty deep dive on that today. But first, let's kind of talk about what we mean when we're talking about classic, we're talking about online, we're talking about versions of SharePoint, right? Like we said, online isn't 13, but if we're in classic mode, it sure looks like it. And we're really not, if we're in SharePoint Online, we're not looking at upgrades anymore. And a large part of me says, hallelujah, because that was always painful. Updates / upgrades happen as we go along. If you've been with SharePoint Online and Office 365 very long, you've heard the word evergreen. And that's what it is. As soon as Microsoft has put features and updates through the paces internally, they start rolling those out for us whether you're like early adoption or where you stand in getting those updates for your tenant. We get those as they're released. So we won't upgrade, we won't do new installs, but we modernize that classic SharePoint online site. We start to take advantage of what's out there for us. So where should we focus first? The big change from classic to modern is going to be your architecture. And this is enough that a lot of us just kind of sit down and go, well, maybe we're not ready for that yet because it's different, flattening out our architecture. Some of us have really deep site collection structures because it was super easy to inherit custom branding from the top level site in a site collection down to our subsites. Well, now Microsoft says if we're going modern, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to have a site per purpose, per department, per team, per project. And when I say site, I'm really saying site collection. That starts to, the emoji with the explosion come out of his head. Boom. That's a lot of site collections. But if you've ever been in that environment where you're having to chase down the rabbit hole of permissions in a very deep site collection structure, imagine how much easier that would be if it's a site collection by site collection. So, sites, pages, layouts. We move from classic to modern. The new site pages are beautiful and very easy to customize. Well, sorry, let me retract that. The customization is very, very different. It's very easy to start editing those for a user to put the content they want to see on the page. And there's more functionality there. Anyone using that Bing map out there yet? Love it. Add an event to your Outlook calendar with the click of a button. Love it. But what if we have custom master pages? Those don't come over to SharePoint Online because there are no master pages in modern sites. But there's a replacement for that. We have site designs and site scripts. So yes, we can modernize classic, but it's very different. So we want to kind of equip you to start really thinking about how you can accomplish that. Architecture, right? That's pretty flat. I see my root publishing site. That's a communication site template, right? Because we're broadcasting, we're communicating information out to our department or our company. We've got a news site with a news web part pulling from our pages library. We can link to blogs or we can create those right there in the site. So we have our collaboration sites. Those are going to be backed up by Microsoft Teams. Woohoo! I love Microsoft Teams, and it comes in and it gives us a place to collaborate, communicate, chat, all the while having a team site back there holding our content, securing it, and making it very easily accessible. Planner comes in and helps us with our tasks, right? It's this whole, I don't want to say environment, ecosystem of tools. My favorite way to describe it is it's a Swiss Army knife now. SharePoint is that really big blade in the Swiss Army knife, right? And then we have Teams, and we have Planner, and we have To Do, and we have Flow, and we have all these other little gadgets in our Swiss Army knife.
Hey, Joy, I'd like to jump in here and just mention a couple things.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of folks out there, we've got a comment in the chat here as well, that kind of doubt this new structure, right? They look at it and they say, gosh, this is really hard to get to. Maybe you have 2,000 subsites. Is it realistic to have 2,000 site collections? Maybe not in all cases, right? So you do have to look at your architecture and figure out what needs to be connected to a team or to a group, and then you can flatten those sites. And you don't have to do everything at once either. And so you can flatten the sites that need to be added to a team and then kind of deal with the rest as you get into modernizing. And that's one of the things we're going to get into a little bit today, is the fact that this stuff, it can all be done as you have the time and the resources. you don't have to do any sweeping upgrade like you've had to do in the past. And so for those that are kind of doubtful of this approach, just keep in mind that there are reasons to be able to flatten it, but that you don't necessarily have to do all of your sites that way.
I think it relates to how we've kind of preached folders inside of libraries. You know, it's one of those never say never. We try to avoid it because the flatter architecture just in a library makes it easier to find what you're looking for. It reduces the chance of duplicating data, permissions stay easier. So we can kind of blow that out a little bit and say, you know, flatter architecture on the bigger scale makes sense as well.
Yep.
And it is more work from the admin point of view because security is king, right? So yes, if you're a Office 365 administrator, we've had lots of people get frustrated about this. It's like, why am I not automatically added to every site collection? Do you really need to be added to the finance site collection? Do you really need to be in HR's internal site, right? There's a reason. If there is justification for that, and you do need to be able to go get in those sites to help, because maybe, and I've been there, I was the SharePoint army of one back in the day for a large organization. You do have to go add yourself in as an administrator, site collection administrator, in each site collection. I get that that's a pain if you're doing it one-off. I'm sure our PowerShell kings and queens out there could have some solutions to help with that. A little bit of work, but being able to have those security boundaries between site collections really is a good thing in the long run.
Yep. And we're not going to spend too much time on this topic just because we have done a webinar on this. So I wanted to make sure everybody sees at the bottom of this link, and we'll share all the slides out as well as the recorded video. But we do have a blog available that details this as well as a webinar. So that'll give you a really deep dive on some of the reasoning behind this structure. And that way we can kind of move forward here and also focus on some of the detailed aspects of modernizing the site as well.
Perfect. So let me go forward. So classic versus modern sites. That's the new dilemma. So when we talk about modernizing the classic sites, we're optimizing the way lists and libraries are used, the features and the capabilities present in just the basic out-of-the-box SharePoint modern library and list interface is fantastic. Connecting sites to an Office 365 group. I mean, how many of you out there have a million distribution lists inside of your organization? So if you're familiar with those DL lists, the Office 365 group isn't very different. But instead of having one group that you can easily email, it's one group that automatically gets permissioned to the resources that the group needs to use. So the SharePoint site, the Microsoft Teams environment, the planner, you instantly have access via that Office 365 group and a joint inbox. So if you need to communicate as a team via email, you can do that as well. Modern wiki web part pages are modernizing those by utilizing the new site pages is critical. Number one reason is we are a mobile culture anymore. We are on the go. We are busy. We don't sit still very much. And the instant we deploy a modern site page to our SharePoint site, our site is now mobile friendly. It's ready to go. I don't have to go pay a designer a lot of money to make my site work on an iPhone or a Samsung. It just works, and it works really well. Rebuilding classic publishing portals as modern publishing portals, scooching over to using communication sites, which again, mobile friendly right out of the box. Really easy to edit and update from a phone, a tablet, whatever you're working on. It's just right there, and you get the advantage of the modern web parts that give us so much more functionality. You can mix and match though. There is no rule that says if you're going modern, you can only use modern site pages. If you really need a wiki page, that is still there for you. If you really need a web part page for your publishing portal, that's still available for you. Will it look as pretty on your iPhone? It will not. But if that's not a big deal and it makes sense, because we want to do things that make sense. We don't modernize just for the sake of latest and greatest. We do it because it makes sense. We utilize the pages and the layouts as it makes sense. So you can roll out that modern site, because why would we want to roll out, I'm going to say it, a legacy site structure when the goal of IT is to be moving forward? So we create our modern sites and we mix and match and use the pages and the page layouts that we need. Just keep in mind though, if I'm wanting to have like hub navigation, and even they say it's coming soon, mega navigation, it's not going to work on a wiki page or a web part page. So we want to keep that in mind. There are some limitations if we're kind of still leaning towards that classic page, but we can utilize the modern SharePoint web parts. So the SharePoint framework web parts do work on classic pages.
And I want to kind of expand on this point because it's so important. I think there's this idea that because we've gone through upgrades in the past, that it's all or nothing, right? We kind of have to make this choice, and we have to go all modern or all classic, and that's truly not the case. It's a matter of picking the best option available for what you are trying to accomplish. And the hope is most of your sites can go modern at this point forward whenever you create a new site collection, but that you always have that fallback. If I need to create a classic page within that modern site, that's okay, and we can make that work. Is it the best experience for the end user? Maybe not, right? Especially if the navigation works differently and things like that. But it definitely works. So we just have to take it scenario by scenario when we're looking at that.
We go back to the what makes sense. We always want to do what makes sense. So this is a big topic. Stephanie, you've been on a lot of client sites lately. What percentage of clients say, what happens to our custom branding?
115%. Yeah, it's always been part of the conversation, right? Whenever we've upgraded, even when we were on-prem SharePoint, everyone wanted to know, does my branding come over? How do we handle it? And it's never upgraded. You went from 2007 to 2010, 2010 to 2013. It's never really come over very easily. We've always had to rework those custom master pages. Sure. Now that there are no master pages, we're taking a totally different look at it again. The branding's different. We're talking about basic themes, logos, headers and footers, but you really can't get to the same level of customization that we were able to do before. And I know that seems like maybe that's going backwards, but it's actually a benefit, because what Microsoft is trying to do is make it easy for you to be mobile friendly. All of those new modern sites are going to load in that SharePoint mobile app. It's going to make everything accessible. Everything's just going to work, and you don't have to do a whole lot of that, customization we had to do before to build a modern responsive page. So it's a huge benefit to doing it this way, even if you're not getting, quote unquote, exactly the custom brand that you wanted.
And I'm not the best person to talk to about branding. I'm sorry, folks. I know you guys put a lot of work into your branding out there, and I'm not belittling that. But my thing is but it works. Why does it need to be pretty if it works? And I get that. It's healthy balance, but I'm usually more concerned about the functionality. It's well, we know where we work. They're the ones that send me a paycheck every couple of weeks. So that's usually my input. But then we have people like Mark and Ryan and folks out there that are so good about making SharePoint look beautiful with the functionality. One thing that has been difficult, though, moving over to modern SharePoint is Save Site as Template went away. That hurt. That hurt a lot. But we have PowerShell. We have site designs. We have site scripts. It's just a little bit more involved now than just clicking Save Site as Template and creating that new site template.
Yeah. And real quick, before we move on, there is a good question here that I wanted to jump in and address. The question is, how modern is SharePoint 2016 on premises? And the answer is not. So 2016 on-prem is very much like 2013. There are more infrastructure upgrades that make hybrid a lot more easy than it was in 2013. But from a page layout perspective, you are not getting access to modern pages. That does not come into play until SharePoint 2019. So just something to keep in mind there. And you're also going to have limitations there. For example, hub sites were not available at the time that 2019 was rolled out into production. So you don't have hub sites, but you do have the modern pages and the modern sites themselves. So you'll have to look at what they do is they take SharePoint Online and they take a snapshot of that and kind of roll it back into on-prem. So that's why you'll see some things that maybe look modern, but are not necessarily in line with where SharePoint Online is with their modern sites. So you do kind of have to be careful setting that expectation appropriately.
And we've got a good question too about, is there a way to get a modern communication site as your O365 root site?
So Q1, that's now essentially till the next couple months. What Microsoft is saying is that they are rolling out the capability to put a communication site as the root site to a limited audience. And what that means to me is they're nervous about something. So it sounds like they want to kind of put it out into the world and see how it goes. So I wouldn't expect to see that anytime soon. However, the replacement for that for the time being would be to create a modern page on your classic site and set it as the home page. So there's a couple hacks in order to do that if you want to remove the left side navigation, because that's always the next question I'm asked. So just be aware that I don't know that you could say that's a fully supported production ready solution. We do have customers that do it, knowing full well that something could shift or change on them. And they've been happy so far. So it's kind of a use it at your own risk kind of thing.
And anytime you say the word hack, you have to go,
Yeah. Yeah.
So site designs, what is it? Well, site designs and site scripts are used together to automate getting provisioning those new or existing modern SharePoint sites so that you can have your own custom configurations inside of them. Site designs are sort of like a template. You can apply that every time a new site's created to get consistent actions. So these can be used with our modern, whether it's group connected or not, team and communication sites. I personally, this is a little outside my realm of expertise. I usually come in after the site is set up, working for people. But we're talking about being able to set things like if you have your company color and you want your company color to be the theme of that bar that's across the top, the quick link buttons, if you decide to fill those with the color, it can make that the color. So you are getting a corporate theme there, but it's not that heavy branding that we were used to on our master pages. So site design can also include recording the new site URL to a log, sending a tweet. So it's not just how it looks. There are actions in the background that can be part of that site design. I have a question here. I'm just going to look over these questions real quick. Topic working here. So some questions about site structure by departments. That might be a good thing for us to get you the link to on the webinar that we did just a couple of months ago. So it's still really new, modernized information that's out there that we can talk with you about on that. So how do site designs work? Very, very carefully is how those work. So you get a site design. When it's selected, SharePoint goes and it runs and creates that new site. The scripts get run, and it basically goes and does the work in the background. We see it kind of from our perspective the same way it'd be when we provision any other sites. Scripts are run, applies theme, any of those actions that we have detail that need to be part of it, such as addressing logs, updating people, those run in parallel as the site is being created. If you're familiar, my favorite place to demo this is when I upload documents into a library. It tells us that we're uploading 5 items. You can open that and kind of see what's running. You can get a detailed results of those actions in a progress pane, kind of a similar functionality. They can be applied to your modern site collections as well as the classic. They can be designed to appear for just specific groups of people. So pretty much anything in this new environment we can scope to a specific audience, very similar to permissionings, because we're talking about utilizing groups, Office 365 groups, Active Directory groups. We can have policies in place that scope who can see these, who can do these, who can run these. So I know we get nervous in the modern world about anyone being able to see the create a site button. We don't want people just to do any and everything, makes us nervous. We can control this. There is governance available to keep this from kind of spreading like wildfire if that makes you nervous. Now we're down to the good part, demo.
How do I share the screen?
All right, let's see if we can
All right.
transition this. You ready, Mark?
I am your designated code monkey for this afternoon / morning. So,
ladies and gentlemen, it's our own SharePoint hillbilly, Mark Rackley.
Yeah, now if I can just figure out sharing how to show the screen.
Let's see if I need to do something here.
I think I've made you presenter now. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Magic.
Yay. So just to show you guys a quick, I wanted to give you an example of a site script and a site design so you could kind of see that in action and let you kind of understand more what you've got going on. So what you're looking at here, this is a site script that is used to create a site. And basically what these site scripts are, they're like recipes for what do you want to do after the site gets created. You can do things like apply a theme, you can change the logo, you can add users to the site. There's a lot of things you can do after the site is created. So in this particular example, if you look at this, this is called a JSON object, all of these brackets and commas and all this stuff. So there's this big JSON object that's used to create these recipes. And if you see it, if you're not a developer, this maybe seem kind of daunting to you. That's because it probably is daunting. There's a lot going on here. But in this example, you can see that there are a bunch of actions that we're going to take after the site's created. And in this one example, we're going to be joining the site we create to a hub site. And this is the ID for that subsite. We're also going to go through and create some site columns, and we're going to create a content type. And that content type is we're going to call it Thrive Task, and it's going to be a parent of item. So you can see that we can create content types, create site columns, and after I create this content type, I'm going to add those site columns that I previously created in the site script to that content type. So you can see just how granular we can get with some of these recipes. So after I create those site columns and the content type, I am then going to create a list using that content type that we created within the site script. And you could also add content types that already currently exist, but since I created the content type here, that's the one I'm adding. In addition to actually creating the list and adding the content type to it, you can create views. So you can see here that I am creating a new view after I create this list. And I do things like tell it what's the row limit, is it paged, what query. So there's a lot of dev stuff going on here. But it's not too bad. If you've got a dev on staff, if you've got someone comfortable with JSON object, there's a lot going on, but it can be fairly easy or complicated depending on what you want to do. The last thing that this particular design does is I'm going to go ahead and trigger a flow. I think this flow is currently not, I think I've currently got disconnected, but what this flow does is it sends an email to a specific person whenever any site gets created with this template, so they can know that a site was created and who created it and what's the URL to the site. So this is a great way to monitor what users are doing too, by creating site designs with site scripts that do things like, hey, email whenever the site gets created. So we create the site script, we deploy it to our environment using PowerShell. You can also deploy it using REST. And the way users use it is they come into your SharePoint page, the SharePoint landing page, and from here you click on Create Site, and then we see our team sites or communication sites. Well, this site script was for a team site, and we can see here when it says choose a site, we can see that site design listed right here. It's called Thrive Site. So I can select that site design, I can give it a name, we'll call it Project E, and we'll go ahead and create it. So as this site gets created, it's going to go through the normal process of creating the modern site. And when it's done, it's going to then execute that script, and it actually will give you a status over here on the right-hand side of all the steps it's doing in that script. So you can see it created the site column, it created the content type, it created the list, and if things error, and attached it to the hub site. You can also see if things error, it tells you that as well. It's saying, well, the flow that I had was not active, so it threw an error saying we couldn't do that. And then you can click on the button that takes you to the updated site. And here's my site that it just got created. So you can see it's really ugly branding, but it's got the same branding as my hub. We've got the hub navigation up here, so it assigned it to our hub. And if we go to our site contents, you can see that we have this list called Thrive Tasks, and it's also has that default view that we set up for it. So you can expand upon these site scripts. You can make them larger, more complicated as you want to, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with them. So definitely check that out. So that's what I got there. Back to you, Joy.
It's that darn unmute button that's always so hard to find.
Yeah, so, the business use case here too, just to kind of touch on that for a minute, if you're saying, well, if I can do all those things manually, why would I do it the hard way with site scripts? It really comes in handy when you're trying to replicate the same site over and over. The most common scenario we have for that is the project site scenario, right? Maybe you create a new project hub, you spin up a new project team every single time you need a new project, and then that gives you the ability to archive off those site collections or those teams as you're done. But maybe you need the same content types and the same customized task content type or item that needs to be added every single time. Now you can make sure that all of that gets rolled out in a way that's consistent without having to manually build it every single time. That's really where this stuff is powerful. It's replacing that template functionality.
There's a lot to be said for templates because, well, we talked about this some yesterday, work smarter, not harder. And it's frustrating when we used to be able to cookie cutter our sites to do exactly that, have those content types, which means I get my same columns, I get my same lists and libraries set up. I get everything there that I need to have over and over and over again without starting from scratch. So that there's been frustration in the community that it feels like we're starting from scratch because we don't have SafeSite as template, and we don't all have Mark Rackley on staff to be able to come in, be our code monkey, and build this out for us. So it can feel a little daunting. I think that's the perfect word, Mark, because we don't have our easy button anymore. Now we're having to talk about coding, and not everyone in the SharePoint admin side of the world is going to be able to sit down and do something like this.
And I know, Juan, you've been kind of quiet on the call here, but did you want to talk through some of these site designs and some of the options that are available here kind of on the next couple of screens?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things that Mark showed, of course, is the JSON object, which kind of defined the entire configurations that he would launch. What he didn't show is the PowerShell scripts, or at least I missed it, in terms of what it takes to run that script, and not only to build it, but then to run it against the site, to register it properly, and then add it in that dropdown. Now, there's a lot that you can do within the site design, and I know it's pretty limited, example. So the first part is building the JSON object to do all the functionality, and the second is actually executing it, which involves PowerShell script. Now, on the right-hand side here, you see all the different activities. We see from the Powell perspective, we see a lot of theming capabilities in terms of demand from our customers about applying themes and logos, navigation. But kind of the biggest hurdle is often controlling the information architecture. So the site columns, the content types, lists and libraries, maybe configurations around versioning that become fairly central to the application and enforcing of information architecture. The next slide on this, if you want to scroll to the next one, has the actual schema of the object. So Mark showed a couple of these activities. This is the complete list of things that you can do in the definitions. If you were to actually build out a site design, you'd be able to do all of these things. One of the examples that I'm going to show is joining a hub site. So actually having the site design actually register you to a target hub site, but there's a lot here that you can do, and unfortunately it's not very power user or end user friendly. It is a development effort, and like Joyce said, not everybody has a rock star like the Pait group team to come in and do this.
And so that's a good point here, right? I mean, this could be a little bit overwhelming. It's pretty technical. There's a lot going on. But what you mentioned with the hub site is really powerful, because now as an end user, as I create a new site, if I'm at least able, if I have admin rights to at least add it to a hub, now that site design can execute because I've added it to the hub. And so once you've set it up, you don't necessarily have to wait on a developer in order to get those things applied. So some pretty powerful things here, especially with the flow in the background, things that you can do to automate this process. So kind of a build it once, use it a bunch of times. So pretty cool stuff there. All right.
And this slide here, I really just put a JSON object here just as a reference. If you wanted the PowerPoint, I know Mark kind of went through a demo. This is kind of what the JSON object looks like, kind of at a high level. And this is just one example of creating a list and setting up a column. But there's some limitations here, of course. There's 300 actions that's a limit, a maximum of 100 site scripts and site designs. And a lot of our customers that run, for example, when we run training and we have quite a bit of participants and really working with site designs, we often run into limits here, and we constantly have to be kind of cleaning up our test tenant to make sure that we stay within the limit. But there's some things you should know there in terms of limits.
I'm going to come back to this slide. One, if you want to run with the next demo and show them, for those that maybe don't have super dev skills or that maybe need some additional options, we did want to show you a little bit of what Powell can do to make that easier for you. So now you've kind of got a good background of what's possible within Office 365 kind of out of the box. We did want to give you a good example as well as what options are out there for third-party tools to make this easier on you as an administrator, as potential stakeholder. These are all things that Juan can kind of magically make happen.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So one other thing, I want to show you a few examples, two in particular. I want to work with kind of piggybacking off of the site designs and the modern experiences, kind of show you how site designs kind of work within the hub experience. Very, very briefly show you declaring a hub site, associating a site design, kind of what the mechanics are there in terms of how it looks like. So I have that example, and I will also show teams. That's part of the modern experience as well. There's a SharePoint modern team site behind each team, and I do want to show you what's available with Powell 365 to help you connect all of that experience together. So first, let me show you a modern hub. So Mark kind of showed a little bit of this, but this is a hub. You have a consistent top navigation, kind of is populated with a bit of content. And what I have at the top here is some sites that are connected to this hub. Now, there's a lot of advantages with branding and navigation and things like that are part of the hub experience. I recently created this Contoso R&D. Now, I built this partly with some of the Powell 365 tools. Now, I didn't do a whole lot here to make it nice and let me share my screen again. Can you see my screen now? Is it okay, Joy? Can you see my SharePoint now?
Well, I'm not seeing SharePoint. I'm still seeing the slide deck.
Okay, let me share my screen here.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so at the top here, I'll go back to central marketing. This is my hub, populated with some basic content, of course, and we have some sites that are connected to the top. So if I go to Contoso Insider, it's another site that's connected to the hub and consistent navigation. I created Contoso R&D, and I created this with the Powell 365 tools. And what I want to show here is what I've done. What I've really kind of put together is a front page split into kind of 50-50 with activity, quick links. I didn't populate it too much. I have 3 web parts at the bottom, events, members, and private documents. And I have a document library behind the scenes. So a very simple scenario. If I were to go to site contents, we would be able to see that there's a private document library here. And right there. So I could have expanded this. I could have added content types. I could have added quite a bit here. I do want to show you what is available kind of out of the box. So first, this is the site collection here, which is the hub. You can see that there are 2 sites here that are connected to Content Insider and the R&D. And if I were to dig a little bit deeper, I could show you some of the other ones. What I would like to do is connect Contoso Excellence and Contoso Collaboration to the hub. Now, first, let's look at Contoso Excellence. So one of the things that you can do now is that you can launch a site design on an existing site. So I have created 2 site designs. One is called Hub Connected Site Design, and one is called Marketing Hub Site Design. Now, I'm going to run this site design and I'm going to apply it. Now, what's a little bit different here than what Mark showed is he got a nice little expansion of activities that run. So he's creating lists, libraries, setting theme, and all of that good stuff. We basically take care of it all. So we run a little flow behind the scenes and we start applying all these configurations because we control in a lot of ways the settings internally. So this does take a few minutes. It connects everything together and applies the site design to the site, and then you'll see it as part of the hub. Now, I want to show you that, but there's actually a better way. One of the scenarios that you could encounter is that I want to automatically run this site design when someone connects to the hub. The question then becomes, how do you connect to the hub? So there's the Contoso Excellence. You can connect this site to a hub. There you go, and it's now connected. Now, I did 2 steps there. One is I applied the site design, and one is I connected it. But we can do better. So I'm going to go to my central marketing hub. And one of the things that you can do is you can register a site design that will run anytime a site is connected to the hub. And this is great for us. The requirement here is I want it to look like Contoso R&D, which means I want that private document library. I want the page, the home page, to look like that page. Of course, you probably can do better than what I've shown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to register that site design, and I'm going to save. So anytime a site is connected to the hub, it will launch that site design. So this is kind of a lot better for us. So now anytime, if we go back to the admin, and I were to connect Contoso collaboration, and I were to connect it to the hub, there's my marketing hub, I know for sure that that site design is going to launch against it. So I don't have to do those 2 steps. And this is a really nice feature within SharePoint, that you can register a site design to a hub and force that information architecture or settings to be run on any connected a site to the hub. So that's that's a first example. Now, there is another option. One of the ways in which you would create a site, like Mark showed, is you would go through SharePoint Home. You would select a communication site in our example, and there's our site designs. Now, I have another example of a hub-connected site design, and I'm going to just launch it. I'm going to call it Sphere Central for now, and I'm just going to launch it. Now, what's unique about this site design is that I've created this site design with Powell Manager, our design tool. It's applying the site design, it's refreshing some changes, it's doing what it needs to. But if I were to go back to the administrative side of things, I'm going to show you at the bottom here, I have a new hub called Sphere. I called it Sphere. I had connected another site in here called Subsphere. And what this site design does is anytime a site gets created with that site design, it will not only apply the configurations of the site design, but will automatically connect that site to the hub. Okay, so that's really what's happening now. The new site that I've started creating, Sphere Central, is not only applying the site design, but it's going to add it to the hub. So that's a special add-on in terms of kind of what our tool can do to do the registration of the site design. Let me switch gears and show you what it takes to do all of what Mark did in Powell Manager. So this is our Powell Manager design tool. I'm in a section here under site designs. And these are the site designs that I've kind of put together. You can see that these 2 guys at the top, the hub site connected and the marketing site design, they're deployed to the tenant. And what's behind is a ton of configurations. But now I want to show you the information architecture, all of the configurations below. So the marketing hub, if I open that guy up, outside of some basic configurations, the key component here is the site template. So Joy mentioned that site designs are somewhat similar to templates, and that's 100% true, but site designs do a whole lot more. One part of it is the information architecture piece. So this is the information architecture piece. So what I would like to show you is what's actually configured as part of that hub connection site template. And that's where you'll see all of the information that Mark put together in a script. It's all put together into this template. So what's available for us to do here? We can create lists and libraries. So I've created that private documents library. If we were to dig deeper, there's an events calendar. There's 2 actually, a document library. And I could quickly add some more libraries, expand, create footer links and announcements and so on. So I could do quite a bit here. And then I could also take a look at the home page and design my layout. So if I wanted to change the way the layout looked, I didn't like that 50-50 split, maybe I want to add a 60-40 split at the top. Save that guy. And then reposition my web parts around to suit the new layout that I put together. I just added a different zone. So there's my site activity and my quick links. Well, maybe I just don't want that. I want to use that 60-40 split. And my members was fairly bare. Maybe I want a little bit more information in the private documents and the weekly events up there. And maybe I'll add a few more web parts over on the right and left-hand side. We come with an array of web parts and connectors, and you can also use the out-of-the-box web parts. So you can fully configure your information architecture and wrap it with the site design model that we have. So it's technically replacing all of the scripting that's produced in the JSON object, all being put together into this nice user interface where you can configure and fully evolve your information architecture. What's nice about this is that you can continue to change it and evolve it over time, and then make changes and synchronize this to all of the sites that are using, so these are all the sites that are using this site design and this information architecture. There's the Contoso Excellence and the collaboration, the R&D, and then the two spheres that I've created. So by hitting this, it would make the change to the layout and rearrange the web parts, maybe add some more information architecture. So that's what's available in terms of the site design model. The other kind of interesting topic that that's becoming quite big now, and it is quite big, is Teams. So this is the Teams environment within this Office 365 tenant. If you haven't seen Teams, and this is the first time, I'll just give a very, very quick brief overview. It has file storage, it has conversation management, of course, calling and meetings, but the makeup of each team that kind of are important for this demo is the creation of tabs, or I'm sorry, channels on the left-hand side. So you can create these channels. And then within each channel, you can configure tabs to register applications or functionality around your site. And one of the things we get a lot from our customers is we want to manage teams. What's available for us to manage? Microsoft recently released a ton of functionality for us to implement and other vendors to implement. And what I've done here is create a very simple example where I have a Marketing Central team with an external and internal channel. And inside of it, I have public documents for external, and internal, I have Docs and SharePoint. Now, the management of this and the creation of this is done through some of our components, and I'll show that in a second. But one of the things under the covers of a team is an actual SharePoint site, which looks like this. This is the Marketing Central SharePoint site that's associated with that team. And you can see that I have a little Powell header up here. I have a different layout and look and feel. So one of the things that we've done, I'm going to go to the Sphere hub that I had created earlier. We have a web part here that displays all of our groups. And you can see the Marketing Central group here. Gives you a little brief, oh, I have to refresh this, expired. But we give you the ability to configure a team and then be able to create a template. So I'll show you the creation of a template. If I create a new team here, it gives me a nice little, let's call this IT department. And I could fill out all this information, but at the bottom, I have two templates that I can pick from, the cross-departmental and external team. And if I go ahead and create it, that will create a team very similar to our marketing team with the tabs and brand the site the way that I have Marketing Central. So it's all encompassed in the template. Now, in Powell Manager, just to give you a quick peek, there's our teams template. There's our cross-departmental and external team. And if I show you the external team, I think that's the one I've driven out. I have the internal and external tabs with the channels with the tabs, and associated with it is a site design, which again is part of the template that I've created with information architecture, or a layout very similar to what I've done. So you can create teams, you can templatize team, control teams, create it from a central place, and ensure that information architecture, look and feel, branding, tabs is all controlled through Powell Manager. So that's what I wanted to show there, Joy.
Perfect. Let me get all this switched around. So definitely a great way to modernize without, like you said, requiring that dev-heavy experience on the workforce. Great management interface, and
and what's important, I think, that we've seen from our experience is that site designs are very powerful. There's a lot that you can do, but I think the creation aspect of site designs is I mean, it's very painful, and like we've mentioned, I mean, not everybody has Mark on cue there to just kind of spin up a bunch of site designs. And what's more kind of important is the evolution of those site designs, managing changes. If 1 month or the next month you decide you want to add a few more things, take away a few others, add some branding, add a few more functionalities, it's very difficult to do that and always come back to scripts all the time and manage that and give you the agility that organizations need to really kind of move, change, and adapt.
Sure. And what's impressive here is the ability to manage it in one place, you know, a nice interface. Would you mind switching back and showing us the Powell Manager interface again, just to have that on the screen? I just think that's an important aspect for it.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I mean, obviously I was very, very focused with the demo, but there's a lot here that you can do, and a site design will really include the majority of these components. I mean, we're just talking about content types and list templates, page designs that are coming out from Microsoft, and page layouts, and site templates. All of that really is encompassed in the information architecture that you control. And of course, we kind of wrap that all around the site design, so you can use it natively, like I showed in the demonstration. So it very much looks and feels very much like any other site design, very similar to what Mark put together. Or you can use this tool independently. One of the things I showed is a very quick screen of all my site designs, where you could see that 2 were deployed to the tenant, so they can be used kind of inside of SharePoint, and the other 2 were not. And they were used internally to Powell Manager. I could launch a team, so that's the one that's used for the team. And there's another one that I use for the Sphere site hub. So I didn't deploy those, I just use those internally. So it's a lot of options here in terms of the way that you can use them, but we wanted to make sure that we worked hand in hand with the Microsoft features.
And that's important because, again, you read it, you see it, you hear it. We mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, it's evergreen. Microsoft is constantly changing. Yep. So the fact that we have a platform here that can help us kind of wrangle our site designs and all these kind of scripts in one place and still be reactive as the changes are being released. Yeah. That's a big plus. Yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate being able to have this kind of behind the scenes glimpse into what's available here.
Yes.
And one quick question as we're wrapping up here. I don't want you to get too far into this, but if users have, or the folks on the call have more questions about Powell, I know there was one in particular regarding security and administration through Powell. So if they want to learn more about security or how any of your Powell stuff works, I know we're going to have our contact info up on the screen here, but is there anywhere in particular you want to send them one to learn more? What's your website, Twitter, etc.?
Yeah, our website is pretty good. I would say we're probably going to reach out with some links that we'll provide in terms of documentation on our material. So our website is good, but we'll also send out information.
Perfect. So let's go ahead. I'm not sure who who currently is our sharer of slides, but we can put
You
that
can do.
contact info.
Let me put that up. Might be a little easier.
It's one of those, how many cooks can we get in the kitchen?
Do you see the PowerPoint?
Let me see.
Or is it still in Powell Manager?
I do. I see it. So
Okay.
fantastic. So there's the contact info, both for Stephanie and for Juan. Both of these guys are a wealth of information when it comes to all this great content that's been shared. And guys, we have actually managed to bring this in an hour. I am super impressed. Kind of a fire hose style webinar. We're very thankful for those of you that have attended and have stuck with us for this whole hour. Great content, great information, great slides. So yes, any other questions anyone wants to put in the questions section? We'll see if we can't keep these guys around for another minute. And we appreciate all of you that did feel comfortable asking questions, letting us know your thoughts. We always appreciate the interaction. All right, you guys are being quiet out there. Is site sub-site structure available in the modern experience? It is. There is the ability to create a sub-site. And as I'm saying that, Stephanie, am I correct? It's still a classic sub-site?
I believe it's a team site. Stephanie, I don't know if you can chime
It's been
in.
a minute since I created one. So I found myself not being sure. But yes, you can create subsites. If it does end up being that classic team site experience, you can still go create a modern page to throw as the home page.
No, it's a modern team site.
Is it modern now?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So as far as, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, but from my experience, it was a modern team site. So even if you had a communication site, I believe you could create a subsite, but it had to be a modern team site underneath.
Good deal. So then there's been an update there. Yay. But again, we want to do what makes sense. If you need that subsite, if it makes sense, then yes, just like folders and libraries, if it makes sense, we can't say don't do it ever, right? We want to do what makes sense for our architecture. So have 365 in the cloud, a struggle with some mechanics, hopefully to get more training. So if you are looking for some more information, again, we'll send out a link after this wraps up that's got some of the information here. We have resources that are available. You can feel free to reach out using the contact info on the screen, and we can link some of that info to you. Absolutely. All right. So I guess I see we're 3 minutes past the top of the hour. Mark and Stephanie are probably cruising on down the highway a little more. We appreciate all of you guys. Happy SharePointing, and thanks again for joining. We'll go ahead and go on mute and wrap up the webinar. Juan, thank you, man. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Okay, should we close down the webinar?